Thank you, Todd. Everybody, welcome to the Government Ops Operations Committee meeting for September 23rd. Thank you all for being here. It looks like we have a full group: Tim Denson, Russell Edwards, Melissa Link, and Patrick Davenport. Thank you, Sherry and Josh, and Officer Daniel for being here as well. All right, here's our agenda for today. So if I can get a motion to approve the September 2nd meeting minutes, that would be good.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving right along, I think Sherry, you've done some outstanding work for us on the on what you've put together here. So, Josh, unless you need to add something, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Sherry to just walk us through what you got and see if we can get this pushed forward to the full mayor and commission. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you so much. It is giving me a warning that I have too many windows open. Can you all see this, or is it not working?
I can't see anything. Yeah.
It's gray shaded. Yeah, it's not coming through. Try one more time. If it doesn't work, I can pull it up, Sharon.
No, it is entirely my fault for having too many windows open. So let me clear my desktop a little bit, and then hopefully it will allow me to share screens again. I apologize. I've never had this error, but I do like to have a lot of tabs open at a given time. Let's
Austin, thank you for being here. I didn't recognize you as well, so thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks.
Hope the job is treating you right. Hope your boss is okay. Yeah.
All right. This is the wrong document, but I think there. Can everyone see that now?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you all so much for your patience while I got that sorted out. So I'm going to try to be really fast, just so you all know if it's a change that's in blue. That was a really excellent recommendation from Chief Sproul. And then the changes in red are going to be ones that I've made, some of which are independent, a lot of which came from Commissioner Denson, who I also very much appreciate your very thorough review of the ordinance. And then some of them also from Chief Sproul or other staff. So most of this is pretty straightforward. What we did, I think there's some clarification needed from the last GOC meeting as to whether we want to, or whether you all would like to include corrections or the sheriff's department. I know that Attorney Drake had wanted us to look into that a little bit further. What I've done at this point is draft it solely as it relates to the police department, because it's always been referred to as the Police Advisory Task Force, but I'm certainly happy to incorporate additional changes. What I can say that we've learned is that the corrections department is entirely operated by the county. So in the sense that the building, the staff, everybody is within the county. However, the contracts for the vast majority of the people that will be residing there, the inmates, is with the Department of Corrections. So it is a state level contract that we don't have any control over in terms of the inmates themselves or their placement there and things like that. The only other thing that the Corrections Department does is they also house the diversion center. And I think most of you are familiar with the diversion center, but in case you're not, the diversion center is an alternative to traditional incarceration for local defendants who have been charged with crimes and who are pleading guilty to those crimes, or maybe pleading guilty to or admitting to a probation violation. And so it's a way for them to still maintain their jobs and be released to work, but still be living in a clean, and by that I mean a sober environment, and still being in custody for the majority of the day. So that's another kind of county aspect of corrections. In terms of our sheriff's department, obviously we're looking at an elected official, and in the same way that the sheriff's department was audited and the sheriff chose to cooperate with that, this organization or this entity couldn't force the sheriff to provide information, but they certainly could file open records act requests, and they certainly could gather information and then make findings based on information that they're able to get, just like any other member of the public. And then certainly if the sheriff was willing to share additional information, they could act upon that information. So I just wanted to report back to you all and get some direction as to whether you wanted me to include either corrections or the sheriff's department in this ordinance. I will also say that I did reach out to Atlanta because that's, what this was based on, and determined that even though they do refer to their Department of Corrections, it is just a local jail. It is not, it's not a state facility. Okay, I can, sorry, good.
No, just that's fine. If I was going to see if any board member had any questions for that, or if
I had a question, Commissioner Chairman. Sure. I'm looking at section 1. Well, shoot, is it section membership? The membership section, I guess the top of page something about the ex officio members. The 30 non-voting ex officio members shall be. Am I missing something there? It looks like we got 2 outlined.
Thank you for catching that. That was a late change. So originally there was going to be the warden, I believe, is what Commissioner Denson had recommended. And we backtracked just to make it only the police department for this. I did not catch that change. So I'll make it now, but certainly if we decide to add either the warden or a representative of the sheriff, that would change that number, of course.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, carry on. Whoever else.
I had a question, Chair, if I could.
Sure.
Sherry, so as you said, in the Atlanta one, it's just pertaining to a local jail. Is that local jail, is that overseen by the city police, or is that overseen by like the Fulton County Sheriff's Department, kind of like Sheriff's Department oversees ours here?
I believe it is a local, they said city when I spoke with them. They did not say Fulton County, and I did look, and Fulton County has a separate facility, so I don't believe it's operated by the sheriff, but I will admit I didn't ask that specific question when I called.
Okay. And I guess
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry, if I guess I guess my I appreciate this, yeah, this kind of thought process, putting this in front of us. I guess my preference would be leaving some ability for there to be, even if we're not able maybe to have a lot of oversight at this point. I mean, my understanding is with the corrections, while we don't necessarily over their policies, the employees under corrections are Athens-Clarke County Unified Government employees, which that has a lot to do with, employee conduct and such in this. So I guess I'd like to see at least that ability retained, even if it's limited at this point, just so that, ordinance wouldn't have to be, redone later on down the line, that authority at least will be in there, even if it's not being utilized that often right now.
And Commissioner Denson, I kind of feel the same way too about the sheriff's department as well. I mean, just things happen in the jail often, so.
I agree with that. I feel like there needs to be some mechanism of oversight, however we can manage to work that in, under state law.
Okay. Sherry, would that be easy somewhere?
This is Patrick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just got a quick question. I agree with my colleagues, but considering the fact that the sheriff department is in charge of the jail, and the position is a constitutional officer, what legal backlash or situation that may come from that?
No, I think that's a great question. And I think, honestly, it's hard for me to imagine anything that would be terribly different from the sort of results that came from the audit of the jail. What I would envision, unless the sheriff as a constitutional officer chooses to provide greater access or chooses to provide greater records, the only thing that this board would be able to access, or that this auditor monitor would be able to access, would be records that are already publicly available from the sheriff's department if someone files a request. So that could be a closed investigation regarding use of force within the jail. There could certainly be all sorts of things about policies, data about, how many inmates are in, or how many inmates receive disciplinary treatment. There could be a whole host of things. I guess the one downside is, I have no control over whether the sheriff chooses to allow them to access those records for free or not. So, that might be something that the sheriff says, look, we're happy to provide it to you, but we're going to treat you like everybody else, and you're going to have to pay for your open records requests. But otherwise, I don't really see any greater legal issues. This board would be able to publish its findings, and then the sheriff would be allowed to do with them as he chooses.
In that case, I mean, don't you think maybe it would be helpful to have the sheriff or his designee on this as an ex officio member? And I also kind of wonder if we shouldn't have an elected official such as a commissioner on the board, so that there is some kind of liaison between the elected body and the work of this board, as an ex officio member, of course.
Absolutely. So my intention following this meeting was to add an ex officio representative of whichever organizations you wanted to include. So whether that was corrections or the sheriff, and then I'm certainly happy to add a commissioner as well.
Does anybody have any thoughts on adding a commissioner one way or the other? I'm trying to, well, we certainly do have commissioners on development authorities and such as that. So it's up to you. It's up to y'all.
I just feel like it would be a way for, I mean, since, this is the work that this board is going to be doing is going to be of great interest to the public. And, the elected body is, the body which the public has direct contact with. I just think that it would be not only appropriate, but helpful to the public as well as to the elected body.
Okay. Well, unless there's any objection with that.
I would just add to that, part of this is, who is this person reporting to? If this person is reporting to mayor and commission, then that's your connection, right? And so I don't know if you need an ex officio at that point from the commission if the person is reporting to the mayor and commission. So just food for thought. The other thing is, if you do add those two, I think it's more than just a police oversight board. So I would recommend changing the name to something else. It's a little misleading at that point.
Yeah, we can.
Commissioner Hamby.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I would prefer not to have a commissioner on because the recommendation would eventually have to come by or pass through. I like the idea of that it being like completely residents of Athens-Clarke County and ex officio members of the police force or whatnot. This is my take, and I, of course, see feedback from my colleagues.
Okay, Russell, Tim, do y'all have any thoughts one way or the other on this?
I would say I do agree with having the sheriffs and corrections both have seats on there. For commissioner, I guess I'm kind of neutral. I do see Commissioner Link's arguments, and so I would be fine with it. Kind of like Josh said, though, I guess I assumed that the auditor monitor would kind of act like a, I don't know, kind of the same way that like the chair of the Arts Council and stuff does, like they would be reporting to us. But I mean, I would be fine with including that.
Yeah. Russell, it's up to you.
Well, I'm fine including sheriff and corrections. As to the ex officio, I mean, I just think of my own ex officio presence on the tree council. I mean, it does come of some use to have a commissioner on the board, at least to explain the agenda cycle or when the budget cycle starts and how the budget works and how a recommendation might be properly drafted and presented and help with process questions like that. So,
okay. Well, Sherry, if you can add the warden, a sheriff representative, warden representative, and a commission representative. Commission representative, I'm assuming, will be appointed by the mayor. So.
Absolutely. And then as far as to Josh's point or Assistant Manager Edwards' point, would we want to change the name to something like Law Enforcement Civilian Oversight Board?
think that makes sense unless somebody else has any other ideas. Public Safety Oversight Board.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, public safety, that's great. Okay, so the next big piece is this section. So I added it as instead, I know there was discussion at the last meeting of making it a C under this first one, but I made it a separate one because it's an initial duty, not necessarily a continuing duty. But I'm open to suggestions if you prefer to move it someplace else. But I wanted to see if this captured your intent of kind of what clarifying the duties of this board once it is started. I can read that if anybody out loud if people can't see it.
I'd say I reviewed this and I thought it, to me, it captured what we were talking about. I'm not sure about Commissioner Link. I know Commissioner Link brought up some of this too.
I agree. I looked over that and thought it looked fine. We wanted their first task to be making some recommendations for us to consider.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that should be the initial, like, first charge of the group, and it should be responsible for shaping the details further down.
All right, Patrick,
I
you
agree
good?
as well.
Okay.
Yes, I agree as well.
Look at this. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Jerry.
So one quick question then is, and this staff pointed this out, and I think it was an excellent point, is, you know, we've mentioned the auditor monitor. We know that role is going to be fleshed out, but, you know, this says that they'll support the board, which is certainly true. But there was the question that Assistant Manager Edwards just raised of who does this auditor monitor ultimately report to? Who does the board ultimately report to? And we had thought that it might be appropriate for us to make it clear that both report to the mayor and commission. But I wanted to get your perspective on that before making that change.
I think that's the way to maintain the independency of it all.
Okay, I'll make that change.
That's my thoughts. If others have any, speak up now.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Okay.
There's some minor changes. We just changed conduct to conduct unbecoming to make it more clear. These are all relatively minor changes, but good changes suggested by Chief Sproul. This is a big piece that Chief Sproul suggested, adding reconsideration. So this is the definition of reconsideration. And then I'm going to scoot ahead very quickly. There's a large section copied from Atlanta directly that's here at the bottom. And this was just the idea of giving due process to everyone involved. So the idea that if this board issues a declaration or a finding that maybe the chief of police or either the victim or the complainant or the officer involved doesn't agree with, that they have a right to request an appeal based perhaps on new evidence. Or similarly, if the chief of police issues a finding that the board doesn't agree with, they have the right to ask the chief of police to reconsider that, and obviously it would include the warden and the sheriff as well. So just creating some due process, which I thought was a good goal. All right, so to return to the top. These, I think this might have been based on Commissioner Denson's recommendation, or was last meeting. Should make this a little smaller. This was a protection about confidential information that the chief suggested that I really appreciated. I think same thing there. Okay, I'll correct these ex officio members, but otherwise that will be as is. This is another section that was added based, I think, on the last meeting, just clarifying the role of the auditor monitor, or at least to start with. And that I put that additional support may be provided. And I was just clarifying with the use of may, that I don't think this organization, this board would have the authority to compel any of these other offices, but certainly that they would be potentially available for assistance.
And just one minor detail, the term auditor monitor, the oversight board will probably come back and say it's an auditor or it's a monitor. It's going to be one or the other. We've combined the two, but just so y'all know, it doesn't have to be both. just different ways of calling one thing. So
If there's certainly a different term anyone would propose, I'm happy to replace that as well.
I would like to see that, up to that civilian board to figure out what, I mean, it may not even be called an auditor monitor. They might come up with a better term for it, but yeah,
Yep.
I'd give to them.
I think that's a possibility. I think that's a good point, Commissioner Link. So just know that might change after they bring back a recommendation.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. That is good.
Okay. So
Sherry, I did have. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I just need to add some language to make it clear that is subject to change, and I can do that. Go ahead.
I did have a question on one part that we skipped over a little bit on under powers and duties on number 11. I had a question where and I'm not sure I was asking on that says however the auditor monitor and it says may and asked to be authorized by the chief of police to verbally share some. I guess I was curious if that in the Atlanta model, if that's the way it was done, that the chief of police had final say on what was able to be authorized to be shared there in that way.
Yeah, candidly, I'll say that one of the things that I don't really like about the Atlanta model is I don't think it was written with the level of sensitivity to confidential information and honestly the realities of the Open Records Act. I think it's written with a belief that more records can be kept confidential by the board than I think realistically can be. So this was a way to indicate that the chief, in trying to assist this board, might be willing to share some confidential information that he otherwise would not be required to release, but it would be on the condition that he would give them authority over whether they could share that or not. So we can certainly remove some of this language, but it might have the unfortunate consequence of making it so that the chief of police doesn't share information that he isn't required to share. Does that make sense?
It does. And I do have some concerns with that, but I guess I would be knowing that we probably will be revisiting this in the future. I'm happy to see this move forward this way and then possibly be one of the things that we kind of watch. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Harry, if I may.
Of course.
Just one quick thought on that. One of the reasons I think that would be important is confidential information may not simply be about an allegation of misconduct. There's oftentimes that a criminal investigation may be running parallel to an administrative investigation, and that may not be a criminal investigation involving the officer as a suspect, but there may be a case that occurred where we're conducting a criminal investigation involving other parties, and some of that information could bleed over into an administrative case. And if that criminal case is still active, then some of that information will be deemed confidential, and there's potential that we could compromise that if we were forced to provide that out or anything like that. And I think that's the concern there.
Thank you very much. All right. So the next big thing. Okay, so this was a suggestion from Commissioner Denson's draft. And he had originally included, I think, $15 an hour. And my recommendation is that if we're going to include a stipend, that it is a true stipend. I don't want to open up any argument that we're creating like a part-time employee who's paid an hourly rate. And so I just put $15 in here as an arbitrary number for you all to set. I think the highest hourly rate that I'm aware of is $20 for the Board of Elections. I think some boards
25.
get 10. Oh, is it 25?
Yeah, it's 25. And typically we only meet 4 times a year.
Gotcha. So that's a different group. Thank you for that.
That's the Board of Health. Is that what you're?
Yes, the Board of Health.
Got it. Right. So I think anything in a $10 to $25 range is defensible. And but you certainly could go in the route that other boards have gone, which is that people are eligible for for reimbursement for actual and necessary expenses, but there isn't a flat stipend. I know there's been some discussion about across the board, what does that look like? So I wanted to highlight this for you all to the extent that you wanted to provide some direction.
And Sherry, could you just share what the LRC is discussing in terms of the potential HRC recommendation? Because it'd be nice if these two match as they come out.
Absolutely. So we actually just had a meeting, and I'm trying to remember, I was in and out of that a little bit. But they talked about a potential stipend. I cannot remember if they actually set an exact amount.
I want to say I heard that they talked about looking at all of our boards and authorities together.
Right.
And doing it like that instead of piecemeal.
I knew that has been.
I would be in favor of looking at it all together. I mean, I think, if the Board of Health's getting 25, I think all the other boards and authorities ought to get 25 as well.
I mean, and there are some boards that do much more in-depth work. I mean, quite frankly, the Board of Health typically only meets 4 times a year, and it's mostly to rubber stamp, ordinance recommendations to bring local ordinances up in line with new state regulations, or to rubber stamp a budget. Things have been different in the pandemic. But yeah, I mean, I feel like an analysis would be based on the type of work that the particular.
Right. Because I think the Planning Commission, I don't know what they get per month, per meeting or per month. It's not much.
Based on, sorry.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Chairman, this is Patrick. Yeah, so based on the type of work that these guys will be doing, considering the fact that they'll be taking cases from the police department or complaints from the police department, I think 25. I consider this. I consider this board may be more active or similarly active to some of our more active boards. So I think 25 is sufficient.
All right. If everybody's good with 25, we'll go ahead and put that in there and try to catch the other boards and authorities up when it's appropriate.
All right. Would you like me to also leave the ability to be reimbursed for actual and necessary expenses?
I don't know about that. That I don't know what that would be or how that would be managed.
I mean, I would think that, having a staff person, auditor, monitor, those, that would be the entity responsible for incurring any expenses that might have to do with investigating.
Right. I
Board
agree.
itself isn't doing the investigating; they're analyzing the information. Correct?
Yeah. Right. I mean, there needs to be some accountability here for that particular thing.
Yeah, I would imagine keeping up with that kind of stuff could be.
Yeah.
cumbersome.
I think that's something that we can revisit later. I would take it out for now if that's the will of the board, and that's my thoughts. So if y'all want to think differently, let me know. But that one may get out of hand.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like, the parameters of this board and that auditor monitor position aren't even set up yet. I don't think it needs to be ingrained in the get-go. I mean, maybe this morphs into something else, and that might be a thing, but I don't think it needs to be in on the front end.
And just quickly, I know
The only expenses I've heard. The only expenses I've heard from other people on other committees has been mainly travel, and so if the stipend is thought to be covering that, then I'd be fine with striking that part for now and revisiting later.
And I was just going to say, just quickly, I know there was a question about the Planning Commission. So they're one of those, it says all members shall serve without compensation, but may be reimbursed for actual expenses. So I think it certainly makes sense to remove this if we are including a stipend.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving forward. Okay, that's actually it, because then we're down to this reconsideration piece, and I'm happy to discuss questions that you all may have there.
All right, y'all. Well, we've seen the changes that Sherry's making with regards to the ex officios and the ones she's has taken out and added. Recognizing those changes, is there a motion to approve this thing and move it forward?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, are y'all ready to finally vote on this? Everybody sure? Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Sherry. We got there.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry. Great job.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you,
all.
Austin. Thank you, committee members too. Appreciate it. Josh, of course, yeah, you're the man.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, no need.
He
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Thank you, Sherry. That was good. Painless.
All
Well,
right. So yeah,
we're going to give Andrew 5 minutes to tell us what we need to think about at the next meeting for parklets. Thank you, Officer Daniel, for being here as well.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. Andrew, the
yeah,
floor is yours for 5 minutes. Tell us what we need to think about.
All right. Josh, if you don't mind, is there an actual assignment description from the mayor?
That would probably help for us to know too.
yeah. So this is the consideration of the extension of the parklet program.
Okay, so a little bit of context. With the onset of the pandemic, we're looking for ways to enhance and create opportunities for outdoor dining and reduce the risk of indoor environments. Stood up a parklet program pretty quickly, provided a couple of updates over time, and it's continued to be in place. We've seen as many as 11 participants, and then it's kind of ebbs and flows over time with a variety of different investments. As we started to see the pandemic stabilize, staff recognized that this either needed to sunset or grow legs and become an ordinance. And through some discussions with you all and the mayor, I think the thought is to try to look at what this might look like as a perpetual program. I'll briefly share screen. I want to give a shout out to my team, Angel Helmley and Gavin Hassemer, taking the night off, knowing that this would be brief, but they've really been diving into some things for a bigger parklet program or ordinance, if you may. So they've actually shared a document with you with kind of 10 foundational questions. We're going to need your feedback on these 10 questions in order to be able to give you the bones of an ordinance. And once we have that, we envision we'll give you a draft ordinance, and then y'all can determine next steps. So I'm going to skip the 10 questions for a second and really tell you a lot of it boils down with Angel has been looking at other communities that have these programs and what are the trends that are in those communities, how are they being used. And then we've also tried to provide context, both why we're asking this question and then what's in the pilot program, if anything, at this point, so that you all can take those items into consideration. And so with that, I'm just going to pause and say, open it to dialogue or questions about the document itself.
Well, maybe Andrew, I don't know that we may have gotten this document. I think Josh sent it to us, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to look at it. I thought our police discussion would go on a little bit longer, but
sure.
If it's all right with the rest of the board, maybe at this point we've got the document. Maybe let's spend the time we need between now and the next meeting to review this document, and perhaps send an email to Josh about questions or something like that, and just be ready to maybe at the next meeting go over this document, and perhaps at that point staff can be ready for an ordinance to come back to us at the next meeting that we can approve quickly like this. So any thoughts on that, or do y'all want to keep talking?
That sounds good to me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'd like to digest this a little bit, and and maybe reach out to some of our businesses about their needs and concerns.
Okay. Well, thank you.
We'll resend the document tomorrow too, so it's top of everybody's inbox. I can do that.
Okay,
Sure.
good.
Chair, can I throw out just a question or something I'd like to see staff bring back when they do that? I'd see included in there.
Sure, that's fine.
So Andrew, I know you had the thing on there about should it be seasonal or available annually? And I guess I was thinking about possibly a third option where it is available annually, but there are time limits that you're able to apply to actually have it continuously for, and maybe you have to, so that it wouldn't be just used up continuously. I don't know, something like that. Maybe one that's like, if you're doing it 7 days a week, there's a certain, like maybe it can be done for a month at a time. And if it's weekends, maybe we could say it can only be done, I don't know, something like, 5 weekends in a row or something like that.
There's going to be two major drivers that y'all are going to want to consider, and really these 10 questions are largely interconnected. The first is to what level of investment a parklet's going to require. So if you look at these other communities that are in the hyperlinks, you'll find that these are very substantial improvements to the space. You know, I would shout out that the National has probably invested the most into their parklet. And even that would be a little under what these other communities require. So you got to think about the investment and mobility of those assets. The other item is how popular will the program be? If you have 5 parklets on a single, or 5 businesses on a single block that want a parklet, we're going to have to know how to resolve that. Do we give all 5 one? Do we do it as a lottery-based system or something else? And so, Commissioner, what I would offer is, as you come to some direction on those questions, I think you may find logical solutions. You know, for example, if there are multiple applicants, maybe it is you're good for 1 year and then you got to get back in line. Or if it's going to be a low-cost improvement similar to what we've seen with the pandemic program, then it's much easier to mobilize and demobilize as needed. So just a little context.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andrew, and Commissioner Denson. We'll continue that discussion as we move forward. So, okay, y'all, before I get a motion to adjourn, I appreciate your time, Andrew, giving us something to start with there. So thank you. Before we adjourn, let's figure out when we want to meet next. You know, Josh, what would be our normal meeting time for next month? October 21st, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Why don't we just stick to that if that's good with everybody at 5 o'clock?
Yep.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
So, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Russell. Y'all have a good evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Have a good night. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, y'all.
Thank you.